And you guys had night vision goggles. You had loaded with ammunition, guns. Y'all went there with the intent of what?
To settle in the drug culture, sir, you can expect two things. It's either we have the upper hand and avoid law enforcement. And my intent that day was to come there to make sure if something went bad, I have the upper hand.
So y'all sort of ambushed them. Is that fair to say?
No, sir.
Chased them down and shot them and then ran over one of them?
Yes.
In 2002, he took 2 lives and was given 2 life sentences without the opportunity of parole. He is applying to have those sentences commuted. We'll go over the details of his crime in his initial appeal at the end of the hearing. With that, let's go.
Mr. You are Jim Nguyen. Your DOC number is 515358. You're classified as a first felony offender. You're here today requesting a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Vermilion Parish for 2 counts of first-degree murder, October 2006. You received a life sentence on each of those counts, and those sentences are to run consecutive. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Would you answer Mr. Marabella, please?
Good morning, Mr. Nguyen. My name is Tony Marabella. Your case was assigned to me, so I'll be the one to question you at first, okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nguyen, how old are you, sir?
I'm 41, sir.
How long have you served on this sentence?
19 years and 3/4.
Tell me a little bit about your educational background, Mr. Nguyen. How, did you get your GED, graduate high school, or tell me a little bit about that?
I obtained my GED when I was in the parish. I got a bachelor degree in Christian ministry at Angola.
Okay. Tell me, let's talk a little bit about drug and alcohol use. I read in your file that you started using drugs at an early age. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Tell me what kind of drugs you were using. Talk to me about your drug use. When did you first start using drugs?
When I was around 13, I was smoking marijuana. And then
And
excuse me, sir.
what did you progress to?
Cocaine.
Okay. When did you start using cocaine?
When I was around 18 with ecstasy.
With ecstasy?
Yes, sir.
And how often were you using cocaine and ecstasy or ecstasy?
Both, sir. It started out only on weekdays and then more often.
Is it fair to say that you were still using drugs when you got arrested in 2002?
Yes, sir.
How often were you using drugs?
Almost every day.
You consider yourself to be a drug addict?
Yes, sir. Recovering drug addict.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what you've done while you've been in prison to address your drug addiction.
I took substance abuse. I was in sober group AA.
What other courses have you taken that have helped you with that? You took Living in Balance. Was that a help for substance abuse?
So when I was taking substance abuse, I realized that you're always a recovering addict. And who you surround yourself around is very important, your environment and the people you interact with. And I realized that we need a support group and somebody who will sponsor you, will hold you accountability, and would lead you in the right path.
What would be your plan for sobriety if you were released?
I would love to find a support group and someone who can sponsor me that I could talk to and could learn from.
At some point, Mr. Nguyen, you got into drug dealing. When did you get into that?
I'm what people call byproduct of my environment. I grew up in early in an environment marked by drugs and poverty. My father was a drug addict, and my brother was selling drugs to support our family. I picked up both trades from both sides. I became an addict and a drug dealer. Then later on, during my 20s, I started selling drugs to support my habits and try to make a living.
Okay. You've accomplished a lot of things while you've been in prison, no question. I've read all of your reports. I've read all of the things that you've done. I've read all of the filings that the Parole Project has filed for you on your behalf. You're a reporter with the Angolite. Are you still working with the Angolite?
Yes, sir.
You've got a lot of education. You've done a lot of things while you've been there. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the crime itself. So tell me in your own words, and I expect you to be honest with me. Tell me what your role was, what you did, and how did this come about?
The incident, I'm very nervous, sir. Please bear
That's
with
all
me.
right, take your time.
The incident involved was drug related. Joseph and I have deal drugs, swap drugs with one another, or even sold drugs to one another. One of our previous deal, I sold drugs to Joseph, which he wanted his money back.
Okay, I got all of that. I want to know what your preparation was for that meeting and what your intent was to have that meeting.
My intent was to meet
I
with.
read the police reports, so be honest with me.
I was the
Read the
one.
reports, I read the statement of Mr. Maines, what y'all were doing before you went out there. So I want to hear it from you.
Yes, sir. I'm here to take ownership of my
I
actions.
understand that. I want to know what you did because you didn't say in your application.
I was the one who fired my weapon at Joseph Wynn first.
Talk to me about the planned meet. Talk to me about what y'all prepared for this meeting. I mean, you guys had night vision goggles. You had loaded with ammunition, guns. Y'all went there with the intent of what?
To settle in the drug culture, sir, you can expect two things. It's either we have the upper hand and avoid law enforcement. And my intent that day was to come there to make sure if something went bad, I have the upper hand.
So y'all sort of ambushed them. Is that fair to say?
No, sir.
Chased them down and shot them and then ran over one of them?
Yes,
I
sir.
understand that was a long time ago and you're not being judged for the crime that you committed back then. You're being judged for your honesty today. So I want to know what your role was. I've looked at the record. I've read all the reports. You got the most serious sentence of everybody. So I suppose you were the ringleader.
Sir, my role in the matter is I had a weapon and I fired the weapon first.
I hear you. But didn't
And
y'all plan to do that? Didn't y'all talk about going jack somebody? Didn't y'all have all kinds of weapons prepared to go there?
Sir,
Didn't you know that was going to be the outcome?
Sir, there was no drugs involved in this meeting. There was no money involved in this meeting.
I'm not talking about drugs or money. I'm talking about guns and murder.
Yes, sir. My intention was to take Joseph Wynn out.
To take him out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty. You've got a good record. Your disciplinary actions, 0, is that correct? You got no write-ups while you've been in prison?
Yes, sir.
You've got a lot of family support. You've got tremendous victim opposition, law enforcement opposition. You've really done well. But my concern, and I'm going to be very honest with you, Mr. Nguyen, you've only served 19 years on a sentence where two men were viciously murdered. Have you done any victim awareness programs while you've been in prison? What would you say to
Yes.
the family victims?
I know that there's nothing I could say to ease the pain that I have caused them. Since my incarceration, all I could do is just live better with my life by doing better. My faith helped me through a lot of things. I grew up in a broken family. I realized that I only did what I knew. But then since I have my education, it helped me to see that there was other ways. And this is not no excuse. My victim family have the right to be angry at me. And there's no amount of time that I could serve to right the wrong I did. I'm here only asking for mercy and a possibility, a chance at parole eligibility. And then I take ownership of what I did, sir.
Mr. Nguyen, I have read your complete report. I have read about your family background, and I understand that. A lot of people come from a lot of backgrounds like you do, but they don't murder two people.
You are correct, sir.
That there is an acceptance of responsibility and there are consequences for our actions sometimes, regardless of how badly we were raised and how much struggle we've had in our life. I am so pleased to see you working so hard and you doing these positive things. You've come a long way and you should be proud of what you've done and you're moving in the right direction. So I absolutely commend you for that. And I want to encourage you to continue to do those sorts of things. Warden, is there anything you'd like to say on behalf of Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, I can only speak, of course, during his incarceration here, and just to echo those things that you brought up. Since he's been here, he's done a lot of things, all positive. And again, just to echo the comments that you've made so far in your questioning of him.
Thank you, Roy.
Ms. Jackson has some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you this afternoon? I'm sure you're pretty nervous.
Yes, ma'am. I'm very nervous. Beside that, I'm okay, ma'am.
Mr. Nguyen, I do echo what Judge Marabella said. You have done exceptionally well in the amount of time that you've been incarcerated. When he asked you what you would say to the victim's family, I didn't get the sense really that you truly appreciate the magnitude of the harm that you caused in this case. There are two people who lost their lives by your own issue. Was to at least take one of them out, but two of them ended up getting shot. Say you understand how they feel, but my question to you is, how do you think they would feel if you were to be released from prison after having served less than 20 years of a life sentence? How do you think your early release would affect them?
Ma'am, with all due respect, I didn't say that I know how they feel. I said they have all the right to
I
hate me.
understand that, but my question is, how do you think they would feel today if this board voted to let you out of prison for not one, but two murders after having served less than 20 years?
I would be angry, ma'am. They would be angry. Because there's no amount of time that I could serve to right the wrong I did to them, the pain I inflicted on them.
Well, but when you say that, that's, to me, that sounds like, well, you know, I've served 19 years, and if I serve another 19 years, it won't make any difference. And I don't really think you understand how devastating it would be to someone, to see someone who is still a very young man be released from prison after having served only 19 years, which is really less than 10 years per life.
You are right, ma'am. I can't answer for them, ma'am. I could only assume how would they feel if I was in their shoe. I would be angry because no amount of time, if somebody killed my member of my family, they serve would change the outcome of how I feel toward them. And that's the best I could tell you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I appreciate your efforts to answer my question. That's all I have, Mrs. Renata.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, Mr. Nguyen, we're going to hear from the folks who are here today. First, we'll hear from those who are in support. We'll start with Mr. Myers.
Yes, good morning, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. I didn't know Mr. Nguyen when he was a child. I didn't know the environment he grew up in. It's well documented, as Mr. Marabella said. I believe that he is a product of his environment. I believe he became exactly what he learned. In that same vein, he learned something different since those actions took those two lives. He learned that that's not the person he knew he should be or could be. And I think he's proven that by his record, by the things he's accomplished. And I can tell you that I hired him as a staff member to the Angelite specifically for that person he had become. No write-ups, a person who could be trusted, a person who was willing to do the work, do what was asked of him, to give of himself and to give to others. One thing that, excuse me, that wasn't pointed out here is his work with Point Lookout Project. From the very beginning, when I asked him to consider being involved in Point Lookout Project, he did not hesitate. First as a volunteer, second after he earned his degree as an inmate minister to actually preside over funerals, officiate funerals, and he continues to do that work. It is for exactly those reasons of the person he knew he could be and he knew he could become. I don't believe that Mr. Nguyen is asking you to release him today. What I believe is he's looking for hope. He's looking for an opportunity to say that, recognizing that the things he has done now, the person he knew he could become and that he has become and is still becoming, would let this board consider that there is a light at the end of his tunnel. So with all those things, I would ask this board to consider him favorably today and whatever recommendation they would deem appropriate.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Henderson.
Good morning, members of the board. I like to echo what Kerry just said and just add one other thing. Kerry mentioned that Jim was looking for hope and opportunity. And I think Jim mentioned it earlier himself. Jim is looking for mercy. And I think this is what this board is actually, the composition of this board is for, to extend mercy to people. And I agree, no amount of time that he probably can serve would ease the pain of the Nguyen family. But this is about how he has kind of like made himself over. I was leaving when he arrived. And after so many visits to the prison, meeting him and seeing him and watching his metamorphosis, I'm just impressed again that here's a guy who took lemons and made lemonade. And I'm asking the board also is for mercy on behalf of Jim, because that's what he needs in this moment. He's hopeful, opportunity to avail himself of every opportunity that presented itself to him. But what he needs in this moment, he needs mercy. And the only people who can give him that is this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey.
Good morning, this honorable board. It's been a while since I've actually had the opportunity to speak with COVID and everything. But, looking at Jim and talking to him over the years when we went into the prison, he always took responsibility, and he was always nervous about what could he say, what could he do. And we always encourage him. The only thing that you could do, you can't change the circumstances that happen. You can change yourself. He worked very, very hard to do those things. And I can remember years ago when Nars, myself, we put the Point Lookout Committee together. And like Nars said, we were leaving when he came. And you wouldn't be believe that this year we've been gone 19 years. But we've always went back to try to help young men and people that we knew that we wanted to see get an opportunity, a person that would take responsibility and give that person some hope and show what to do. We would tell him, make sure that you keep your record clean, take all the programs you can take care. You cannot change the nature of the offense. You cannot change law enforcement offense. You cannot change victim offense opposition. But what you can do is change yourself. Jim done all of those things. And today I would ask this board to give him the hope. Give him the hope that he has worked so hard for. He has done it. He's put the work in. And I would ask this board just to consider today to give him the hope that he can be a free man one day. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll hear from the victim's family. We'll start with Ms. Julia.
Good morning. My name is Julia Nguyen, and I am the sister of Tane Nguyen. I am here to speak on behalf of my family. They say time heals all wounds. I disagree. July 16, 2002 would be a day I would never forget. It has been almost 20 years, and the pain has never gone. When I think about my brother's last moment of love, I think of the pain he endured. You have caused me so much pain, anxiety, and depression. It made me sad to think that he was only 20 when you took him away from us, cruelly and brutally. His life has ended so soon. You have robbed my brother from my life. A family feel Jim should be held accountable for his action, because my brother was at the wrong place at the wrong time does not give him the right to take his life. Because his complete disregard for human life and in his nature and variety of this crime, he must remain behind bars so that my family would not have to live in fear. My family should not have to keep reliving the pain of the past because of these parole hearings. And Jim knew in decision to take not just one life, but two lives of another human being. Jim took away my brother's right to live. He does not deserve the right to freedom. Why does he deserve a second chance when my brother doesn't get one? After serving the short almost 20 years, it just seems so unjust for murdering and burning him alive. My brother did not deserve to have his life in this way. I am asking you not to grant him pardon, that he must remain in prison so that he can never harm another innocent human being. That is all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Tram.
Hi. My name is Tram and I'm Tang's other sister. The statement my sister made was just about what I wanted to say. The pain that we are going through for the past 20 years is still embedded in our hearts. Just like the memory of our brother's handprints embedded in the ground trying to live. Jim's action is heartless. His action was not a simple murder. He tortured and burned our brother alive. Our brother is gone, but the voices of his families are still here, and we will forever be his advocate until the end. We're asking the member of the board to not grant his pardon.
Thank you. Thank you. Lisa? I think you're on mute, Miss Lisa. There you go.
Good afternoon. I'm the sister of Tang Nguyen. This year will mark 20 years since we lost our brother's soul. His soul was burnt alive by Jim Nguyen, fighting for his life to live. Until this day, we don't understand why Jim would commit such a cruel act. How can you watch someone that was your brother-in-law die in pain? Hearing what happened at 12 years old is devastating. I wasn't able to see my brother's face for the last time. I didn't get a chance to hug him or hold him for the last time. I would call his phone hoping he would answer just so I can hear his voice. My brother wasn't ready to leave this world. He was taken out of this world by a cruel act of greed. Someone who didn't think twice of their action. My pain will never go away, just like my brother will never come back. My family and I are asking the jury to please deny Jim's Nguyen pardon request.
Thank you all. I think that the board is prepared to vote now. Mr. Nguyen, is there a statement you'd like to make before we vote?
I just want to say I'm sorry. I know that there's no word I could say that could ease the pain. I hope one day you could find peace. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll be voting. We'll start with Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Nguyen, I do want to compliment you on all of the hard work that you've done. You've accomplished a lot in 19 years. There's no question. You've taken some excellent programs. You've achieved a lot. You've got some education behind you. You reporter for the Angleite, and I realize how important those things are. You've done well while you've been in prison. However, in balancing everything, I have to look at the crime that you committed really is only one factor that I take into account, and it was a horrible crime, no question about that. You know, as I look on the crime and as I see you today, a man who's done so many very positive things, it concerns me that I don't believe you were forthcoming in what happened. I think you ultimately said it, yes, but I don't really think that you have reflected on the time that you've been in prison, what you did and how it's affected other people. You know, I mean, you talk about your background and you talk about how you were raised and you were a product of your background. I understand all of those things. And I understand how you could have committed a crime like this because of the way you were raised and what all you did. But in the 19 years that you've been in prison, I would have expected a more responsible answer to the victims, to understand what they really did, for you to accept responsibility for what you really did. I get the impression that you reading the reports of the sociologists and they talk about your background, and that's probably why you ended up doing such things. A lot of people, as I said earlier, are raised in horrible backgrounds, abusive families, drug dealing families. They don't end up killing two people the way that you did. And I just think that the pain that the victim's family has showed today, and I respect their courage to be here to talk up on behalf of their deceased family members. I don't think you understand it, and I don't think that you can fully appreciate that just yet. And I think that with law enforcement opposition, victim opposition, it would be a slap in the face to these victims for us or for me to vote to commute your sentence after only serving 19 years on 2 life sentences consecutive. That judge who sentenced you had an opportunity to look at your background and look at everything else, and that judge could have sent a message perhaps to us by saying concurrent time, or I understand all this, but it wasn't. You got the most significant sentence of anybody that was involved in that crime. You were the master. So my vote today is to deny, but to encourage you to look introspectively and really accept and understand the horrible nature of this crime and the horrible effect it has had on the victims. So good luck to you. You worked hard, and I hope you continue to work hard. You'll have a day. I hope this does give you some hope, at least give you some idea of what I believe you need to do to better yourself, to have a vote for me. I'm not likely to be on this board when you come back before you, but good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Arabella. Mr. Freeman?
Looking at the crime and everything, listening to the victim's family, I also think it would be a big slap in the face to commute this sentence at this present time. 19 years is not much for 2 lives, and especially with all the premeditation that went into this. So I also vote to deny, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Nguyen, I do want to commend you for the things that you've accomplished. And it's, phenomenal that you have not gotten any write-ups during your incarceration. And we don't see that very often. So you need to be commended for all of those things. I think there is hope for you because I believe you're going to continue on the path that you're on. And I believe that there will be a day where you'll receive a favorable recommendation, but not after 19 years. In view of the nature of the offense, the strong opposition from law enforcement and the victim's family, and the added trauma that the victim's family would experience if you were granted a commutation after so little time in prison. So my vote today is to deny, but encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and not necessarily just to get out, but just because it makes you a better person. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. O'Shea?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Nguyen, I'd like to echo all the words articulated by Mr. Marabella, Mr. Freeman, and Mrs. Jackson. I agree with everything they've stated and based upon overwhelming opposition from the victim's family, expressed opposition from law enforcement, and insufficient time served. My vote is to deny also.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. So, Mr. Nguyen, you've received 4 votes to deny your application for clemency. So that is the outcome of today's proceedings. Your application's been denied, but I think you've heard from everybody. the strong words of encouragement to, stay the course, reapply, when you're eligible. That is just insufficient time at this point. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
This was a brutal, brutal killing, and we'll go over it in the appeal that we have from him, and it goes over the details. And with that information of this appeal and the details of the crime, I can see what Mr. Mirabella was trying to get at the beginning of the interview. And in Mr. Mirabella's final statement, he addressed it, which was, you still weren't taking accountability. You spent all this time in prison, and he wasn't just, he didn't, he didn't have like a clear way of describing what happened at the crime. He was avoiding the idea that they intentionally went out there to ambush. He said that it wasn't a drug deal. It was, so what was it? And he wasn't honest. From what we read in this appeal, it seemed to had been a deal. It seemed that there were supposed to be an exchange of narcotics and money, and that they took the narcotics and didn't want to give them the money. That was my understanding of it. And there's also witnesses in here that said that they were planning it, like Mr. Mirabella said. You guys had night vision goggles. You had all these weapons. And then they did do what we'll go over it in detail, but they chased them down after they fired the gun in the exchange, taking the narcotics, then chased them down. The victims were leaving in their car, speeding away. They crashed. These monsters came over, shot into the car, poured gasoline on the car, lit it on fire. One of the victims stumbled, like out of a war scene movie, out of the car. They were driving away, but then they saw that a person was walking out of the car. They turned around and finished him off in the way that was described. And to not hear the empathy from him at all was just scary. Maybe he's not able to feel empathy. And of course, we see this just so often, almost every time, where the supporters come on and they speak about flying turtles and rainbows and just nothing really. They really say nothing when you actually listen to it. And the parole project. Oh, this is why I hired him, because he's so great. And then you have Norris, who always he's just not good at public speaking, and yet he does it. For years he's been doing it, and it's like you would think that at some point you would want to improve yourself. This is like part of your job. You would maybe take Toastmasters. You would maybe learn to like write a speech, say something profound, versus he made lemons out of no what he made lemonade out of lemons. And it's like, okay, I guess he can continue to make lemonade in prison. And then the victims come on, and it's always this emotional downpour of pain. And the contrast is so vivid. Could you imagine working for the Parole Project or for any of those other and as part of your job to get up and make one of these robot speeches about lemonade and turtles, and then knowing that there are true victims that are going to pour their heart out afterwards, and you do this day after day, multiple times a day sometimes, year after year. I, it, just think about that. How do you go to sleep at night? And these are hardcore villains themselves. I've been saying I'm gonna do it. I haven't done it yet, but I should really go over the crimes that these guys committed themselves. You know what? I will. After this hearing, we're gonna go over what Carrie Myers did. This is a long time due. We should have done this a long time ago, but we're going to go over his appeal that goes over the details of what he did, and yeah, which was killing his wife, of course. So, but before we do that, let's jump into the details of this horrific crime, and then we'll go over Carrie Myers and how much. Okay, so let's go back to this crime. So Jason testified. Now he this appeal, the really the only thing that he was appealing in this was that the one of the witnesses or expert witnesses who was an attorney um, ended up being an attorney for one of the prosecutors, and he appealed saying that that was a conflict of interest. And basically the appeal comes back and says he was just one witness. The crux of the case didn't rely on it. You're still going to spend the rest of your life in prison. So, but we'll read what this appeal contains is the details of the crime. So next, Jason testified that the defendant told David that it would be better for Jason to drive their father's truck. I'm starting at page 11. I'll put the link in the description if you want it. But David agreed and Jason followed along. When they got ready to leave, Jason was in the driver's seat with David. He was the passenger seat with a shotgun on his lap. The defendant then passed the Tech 9 through the window, put it in Jason's lap with a towel, and told him not to touch it. Another loaded shotgun was behind the driver's seat, which was our little lemonade maker was holding. Jason and David proceeded down the road while the defendant got into the car with Fung, the driver, and Michelle, and they traveled to a different destination. Upon reaching a dark wooded area, Jason stated that he and David parked. David got out of the truck, disappeared into the dark, and they waited. See, they're ambushing them. Next, two cars pulled up behind Jason. The defendant got out of the car, driven, and walked to the side of the truck carrying a bag of narcotics. You see, he lied, saying there was no exchange. It was, he really didn't take accountability at his hearing. He was just trying to just appease Mr. Mirabella at the end there. Jason testified that the gun was still in his lap, and the defendant began to fiddle with it, possibly turning it off. Remember, the defendant is Jim, who we just saw, our lemonade maker. The defendant put the gun back on Jason's lap and walked away from the truck toward the other car. The defendant, Jim, yelled at one of the men to come, and then he returned to the truck, threw the narcotics in Jason's lap, grabbed the weapon, and then turned around. A man from the other car was walking up to the defendant, said something in Vietnamese, and the defendant shot him. So as you can see, it was an unprovoked, just shot him. After the shot was fired, he fled the scene, and Jason began to hear shots coming from the tree line. At the same time, and Jason ended up turning state witness against Jim. That's why. So at the same time, the defendant retrieved the shotgun from behind Jason's seat. Next, the defendant and David jumped into the back of the truck, and they began to chase the two men in the other car. During the high-speed chase, the driver of the other car fell over in his seat, and the car coasted over the highway into a church parking lot. So I guess he was the one who was shot. So he, while driving away, lost consciousness. The car and how, this, it's like out of a scene of a movie. It flies into the church parking lot. Jason pulled up to the side of the car, and David and the defendant jumped out of the truck. Next, the defendant grabbed a gas can and poured gas on the driver's side of the car and ignited it on fire. David got back into the passenger side of the truck, then scooted over, allowing the defendant to enter the passenger side of the truck. Jason then turned the truck around to leave, crossed the highway. When someone looked back, so they're leaving, right? Someone looks back and sees that the passenger had gotten out of the car and started walking. David and the defendant told Jason to go back, so he did. He turned around. The passenger was walking towards the church and fell to the ground. I mean, I'm just picturing this. Louisiana, pitch black at night, this car lit on fire, church parking lot, the man walking, stumbling. They turn around in their pickup truck. The passenger's walking toward the church, and then he falls down. At that time, either David or the defendant instructed Jason to run over the man. Jason complied, running over the lower portion of the man's body. Next, the men left the scene, returned to the home of, you just can't make it up. You hear how brutal this is. And well, he's great at making lemonade. Free him. Next, the men left the scene and returned to the home of Kyle Myers, the father of Jason and David, where Jason and David also resided. After they arrived, they all got out of the truck. Well, he's not asking for freedom. He just wants to know that one day he can have freedom. Just commute his sentence. After they arrived, they all got out of the truck. Jason went into the house, and David began cleaning off the truck. And then Michelle arrived soon after. At that point, the defendant told everyone to strip down. So the defendant was the boss, like Mr. Marabella pointed out. And he never denied it. And I almost feel like it was part of his ego not to deny it. He told everyone to strip down and burn their clothes. Eventually, Kyle returned home and was upset, possibly because someone had told him what happened. After the clothes were burned, David and the defendant left while Jason stayed with his father. According to Jason, the guns were buried in the backyard before they left. Jason admitted that he was under the influence of narcotics at the time of the incident and that his ability to perceive and recall was impaired. He testified, however, that he sobered up as the events unfolded and was sober enough to stay on the road traveling at 100 miles per hour. This is the driver of the truck who said that, Kyle Myers was a key witness for the state, and there was no agreement between the state and Kyle for him to testify at the defendant's trial. Kyle stated that he realized that something was wrong when he saw his son David driving his red truck up the road to their house at a high rate of speed, along with another vehicle, blue car, usually driven by a defendant. Before he walked up, he saw David take a blanket he believed contained weapons and put the blanket in some brush in the woods. So they're going through those details. Kyle eventually retrieved the guns, 2 shotguns belonging to his son and pistol, and disposed of them. Oh, that's why he had gotten some time for doing that. But then he ended up taking the stand as state witness. Oh no, actually, it looks like he got immunity. But that was, as you can see, it was really a brutal crime. And you didn't get that in the interview. He was just trying to play, I don't know, dude, in the gang, you have to have the upper hand. And it's like, no, this was like a pure assassination. And it seems you took narcotics. But there you have it. I'm happy with the results. It was nice to see Mr. Marabella, Mr. Roche. Sorry, Miss Jackson. This board is just classic. And I miss him. Now what we're going to do is we are going to learn about our dear friend, Carrie Myers. And let's go. This is a long time coming.
John Bell Edwards this week granted release to a man accused of murder in one of the most bizarre criminal cases in Jefferson Parish history. Investigative reporter Mike Perlstein and our partners at the New Orleans Advocate broke the story earlier today, and Mike joins us with these bizarre details.
Bizarre is right. And Ton, what we have is longtime Angola inmate and convicted murderer Kerry Myers will be on his way to freedom soon after the governor signed an order this week to commute his life sentence to 30 years, making him immediately eligible for parole. In a 1984 case that confounded even detectives and prosecutors with its many twists and turns, Myers was convicted of killing his wife after a trial in 1990. But that came after Myers had previously been the star witness against another man, William Fontenelle, testifying that his former friend used a baseball bat in the killing. But after Fontenelle's first trial ended in a hung jury, prosecutors decided to go after both men for murder. While Fontenelle was convicted of manslaughter by a jury, Myers decided to go with a judge trial and was astounded when he was found guilty. Here's Myers in an old WWL-TV prison interview.
When you heard the verdict, what?
Couldn't believe it. I don't see how the man could have come to those conclusions.
You couldn't see the evidence stacking up against you in the trial.
What? A smear on my pants? What is that? The man had just killed my wife with the same bat that he attacked me with.
Wasn't there blood splatter on your pants?
No, a smear.
Fontenelle was released years ago, while Myers was twice recommended by the Louisiana Pardon Board for a reduced sentence. He had been denied by former Governor Bobby Jindal, but on Tuesday, Governor Edwards signed his papers to freedom. Myers leaves Angola as a trustee and longtime editor of the award-winning Angolite magazine. Now, in recent years, there's been a petition and a website calling for his release. Now, we're still looking for family or friends of Myers so that we can get in touch with him for an interview, so stay tuned.
That'll be very interesting.
So that was my first time seeing that with you, and just seeing a young Carrie Myers stand there and do the whole, like, I don't know how they thought it was me. I couldn't stop laughing. And I hope you don't think that there's something wrong with that. But seeing Carrie Myers over, it's all making sense now. Oh my gosh. Wow. I actually had no idea. I knew he killed his wife, but I didn't know it was some crazy, bizarre. It gets nuttier. I mean, this was nutty. This was just wacky, like they said. Oh my God. Wow. So, you know what ended up happening? I don't remember the exact, but the governor, so it was recommended to the governor to release him, I believe that's what it was, but the governor didn't end up signing it, and he had to wait like 8 years, so he got released. So that's part of what they were saying with the petition. It wasn't like he was immediately released after that news article. I like how they had that old TV box in there too. That was a great little graphic. So I haven't read this yet. This will be my first time reading it with you. Now I'm curious to know also what what's his name did. I don't know why. I'm like not great with remembering names. The lemonade maker, right? Norris. I wonder what he did. Okay, so defendant Carrie Myers and William Fontenelle are charged with conspiracy to commit second-degree homicide and second-degree homicide of Janet Myers. Previously, Fontenelle was arrested and charged with first degree. His trial was held in October 1986, resulting in a hung jury with 6 jurors voting acquittal and 6 voting to convict. Wow, can you imagine having 6 against 6? Following the mistrial, the case was again submitted to a grand jury, and both defendants were indicted. Now, that's what they both were. Defendants filed pretrial motions to have the state let the predicate for its introduction of certain statements made by the defendants before using them at trial. After hearing on the matter, the trial court ruled that the statements were inadmissible since the state failed to present prima facie case of conspiracy. The state applied for writs in the Fifth Circuit Court, which was denied. State versus Myers and Fontenot. We grant writs, State versus Myers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the scant record before this court reveals the following events. In the early morning hours of February 24th, 1984. Think about that. 1984. Was that 40 years ago? William Fontenot entered to Joe Ellen Smith's hospital with numerous stab wounds. He was questioned by John Taylor, a police officer with the New Orleans Police Department, about the wounds. Fontenot explained that he had gone to the home of Carrie and Janet Myers at about 4 p.m. on February 23, 1984, to retrieve a baseball bat that he had left there on the previous day. Fontenot claims that Carrie Myers let him in the door and attacked him with a knife and stabbed him several times. The two men fought intermittently for the next 9.5 hours, pausing occasionally to watch television. What? It's like a Family Guy episode, you know, where those fights drag on and they just stop to watch TV. Are you joking? Sorry. Let's see. Can we see Carrie Myers again on that sitting in prison? Oh my God. He stated, I mean, you know, it's funny. Like, I always assumed, I made assumptions about Carrie. That's the problem. Never make assumptions. I had assumed that he had killed his wife, that it was something, but I didn't realize it was so comically ridiculous that he's like the classic clown. And the whole thing was just bizarre and clownish and ridiculous and evil, of course. He stated that Myers, just dumb. He stated that Myers kept him at bay with a knife and later the baseball bat and would not allow him to call an ambulance or treat him for his wounds. He contends that at one point, Myers gave in and stated that he could call an ambulance. Myers went to the kitchen to place the call. After several hours, when the ambulance did not come, it became apparent that Myers had not actually made the call. Later, Myers gave permission for Fontenot to go to the bathroom, but while walking down the hall, Myers attacked him from behind. They wrestled for several hours, with neither person being able to gain control of the knife. Fontenot claims that eventually Myers gripped the knife and loosened, and he was able to flee from the house. I mean, just we know how ridiculous this story sounds, but wrestled for several hours, like, you know, the best in shape Olympians in the world, a boxing match, they can at most go 10 rounds with a break every like few minutes. What, 3 minutes? And but all of a sudden these guys, they're like gods. They can just wrestle for a few hours. I wonder what they were doing, huh? Maybe they were wrestling. On March 15, 1984, the assistants of counsel Myers related a similar story to Sergeant Robert Mason. In his statement, he contends that it was Fontenot who attacked him when he arrived home from work. He stated that when he entered the door of his house, Fontenot was already inside and attacked him with a baseball bat. He fends off one of the blows with his arm, which is broken by impact. He told a similar story of how the two fought, also stating the two would suspend the fight to watch television and discuss their respective domestic problems. Oh, man. He stated that he heard the moans of his wife and the cries of his children. Now, finally, his wife and children come to the picture because, I mean, up until now, I totally forgot they were even there. But was unable to check their condition because Fontenot was armed with the bat and the knife. When Fontenot decided to use the bathroom, Myers claims, I didn't even know there were children involved in this. This is disturbing. I'm afraid to read on. Myers claims that he was ordered to lead the way down the hall. Fontenot attacked him from behind. He further related the two wrestled each other on the floor, where they remained for several hours until his grip on the knife loosened. He was able to chase him out of the house. He immediately called the police, grabbed a shotgun to protect himself. In the event Fontenot returned, he later checked on his wife and found her beaten and stabbed body in the living room. It's a completely believable story. I don't know why a jury didn't
acquit him. Although it seems 6 of them did, but that's probably because they thought Kerry Myers did it. I don't know. At first trial, Fontenot for first degree, Carrie Myers was the chief witness of the state testifying to his version of events surrounding the murder. Can you even imagine that a DA would allow your star witness to get up and share this course of events? What? They both need to be charged. Like, what are you talking about? This is insane. The first terrifying. Testifying to his version of events surrounding the murder, Fontenot testified on his own behalf relating to his version of the incident. After the 93 mistrial, the state again submitted the case to the grand jury, which returned to present indictments. This is just bizarre. The state made known the defendant's intention to use the statements. I am, what? Okay, what else did they say? I mean, this is just so ridiculous. I mean, this is the type of like murder plot and excuse. Like, you can't, you couldn't even put this in a book. It's so dumb. I feel like I need more information on this. But yeah, this puts a whole new twist in perspective, doesn't it? Now, do you want to look at this from a different perspective? Look how much he changed. Look how he turned his life around to help others. I want you to know that the Parole Project makes a ton of money. The state of Louisiana diverted like tens of millions of dollars over the next 10 years to projects like the Louisiana Parole Project. So it's a cash cow as far as I understand it. So it's not out of the goodness of his heart. It's actually just a great opportunity to print money. Let's see if I get a little bit more info before I let you go. Okay, I'm back from a little bit of researching. There's a Wikipedia page on it, which I'll put in the description. On that Wikipedia page, they have a link to a YouTube where there's actually a movie made on this, a movie. It's an hour and 30 minutes long. It's called Murder Between Friends. It's made in 1994. I had no interest in watching it, but I'll put the link in there if you want to. There's also a book, Murder Between Friends. So this is a big deal. And what I found out too, which is very disturbing, of course, is that he had a young son, a little boy who was also beaten with a baseball bat and suffered a fractured skull. Now, the Wikipedia page said that the son died, but that just goes to show you that, you should always be extra you should, whatever the word I'm looking for. Wikipedia pages aren't, always accurate. Anyone can put stuff in there. The news article that I have here says that his son did not die, that he ended up recovering. But so Carrie Myers not only killed his wife, but it looks like he tried to kill his toddler. And the article goes on to say that his co-defendant, or this is what the prosecutor said in their trial, that the co-defendant were high school buddies, and his co-defendant was actually having sex with Carrie's wife, but they seemed to know about it. And what they were conspiring was that they were going to kill each other's wives. And then, of course, it fell apart because of their genius stories. So I almost wonder there's something more going on. I'll again put the links in the description, but yeah, I kind of wish that I had done this a long time ago because I think it paints a picture. It paints a pretty ugly picture. But hey, now we can look at Carrie Myers, quite differently. Maybe I'll throw in that newsreel every time he comes up with another monotone speech about how great and warm and fuzzy everyone is. Maybe I'll do Norse next. And with that, I'll let you go.
Verdict.
Couldn't believe it. I don't see how the man could have come to those conclusions.
You couldn't see the evidence stacking up against you in the trial.
What? A smear on my pants? What is that? The man had just killed my wife with the same bat that he attacked me with.
Wasn't there blood splatter on your pants?
No. A smear.
I am looking very much for a new wife.